All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome, viewers and listeners. My name is Ana Navarrete. I am the program director for the Undocumented Student Resource Center. I'm here today with all of you and three really special guests to have a really great conversation around topics that impact our undocumented communities here at San Jose State. This is our first time really putting together a podcast or anything like this, but we really just wanted to create a space where students can join us and share their stories, share their narratives, so we can get a better understanding about what the experiences are of all of our undocumented students. It's really important to understand that not all of our students have the same experiences. Not all undocumented students are Latinx. Not all undocumented students have DACA. And so it's really important to recognize the diversity amongst our student population and their families. And so we wanted to have this space to be able to offer an opportunity for students and community members to engage with us around different topics that impact our immigrant communities. For today's topic, we're going to be talking about the intersection of being first generation and undocumented. And so I want to introduce one of our speakers today, Edith, who is going to talk to a little bit about what is it about being first generation and undocumented that we really need to sit down and understand in terms to better support our undocumented immigrant communities. Hi, Edith.
Hi, Anna. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here with you guys today. As Anna said, my name is Eder. I am actually a graduate intern with the Undocumented Student Resource Center, and I am doing a master's in applied anthropology. And this idea to have a podcast is a space for us to just have a dialogue in regards to our experiences as students right now at San Jose State, and not just at San Jose State, but pretty much any student going to college in the U.S. And when we speak, and this term is very often nowadays, being undocumented, we also hear other terms like being first gen, being low income, that is, and even the combination of being first gen and low income. But there is sometimes not a definition behind that. Rather, they're treated as individuals or separate, to say that. Now, often we forget that undocumented students are the first ones in their whole families, right, to go to college, whether it's a community college, a four-year college, or even trying to get a vocational degree or a technical degree. Now, while low-income first-generation students might have some of the same struggles, undocumented students also face the same struggles. So today we're going to try to understand how is that they're very similar to each other, but at the same time, there is also some difference between their experiences. Maybe actually we need to introduce our two speakers today. I'm gonna pass the torch to Evelyn. Evelyn, I say your name. Can you share your major, your year, and also your hometown?
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. My name is Evelyn. I'm a third year majoring in child and adolescent development, and I'm currently back home in Vacaville.
Thank you, Evelyn. Now I'm gonna pass the torch to our second speaker.
Hi guys, I'm Jorge. It's very nice to be here to have this discussion today. I am currently residing in San Jose, but my main hometown is Watsonville. I'm a business major with a concentration in entrepreneurship, and I am a graduating senior.
Thank
Awesome.
you both.
Yeah, thank you both. I guess I'll start. Actually, Anna, why don't you also share a little bit with us?
Thank you. No, I always felt to really talk about, my own background because, of course, this is not about me, it's about my students. But, I myself am undocumented. I do have DACA. And so as an undergraduate student, my experiences as an undocumented person were very different than, the current generation, just because I was growing up in a time where there was no California Dream Act, no DACA, and the resources were very, very scarce. And so my experience as being a first generation student, especially at the community college system, because that's where I started, really, defined my experience as an undergrad and what I would consider being a common experience for many undocumented first generation folks. And so, this topic is very close to my heart, but, it's always incredible to know that despite sharing similar things like, an immigration status or lack thereof, right, with other folks, our experiences tend to be very different. And so it's really important for even us as undocumented folks to be able to listen and understand how are other undocumented folks experiencing being first generation and undocumented. Of course, what are the identities that they carry that impact those experiences? Because we can't talk about being first generation undocumented without also acknowledging our other identities. And so I'm really excited for this conversation and to learning from all of you. And so, maybe we can go ahead and get started.
Yeah, no, thank you, Anna. And that's one thing that we should be always conscious, our backgrounds, our hometowns, and how they shape our experiences, right? As undocumented students, just trying to pursue a college education and also for our own personal growth. And the first question for all of us, including you, Anna, how do institutions define being first generation?
As far as institutions, I haven't really seen an institution define first generation, like written from what I can remember. But what I think is first one to go to college, maybe first to, or like your parents did not go to college kind of thing. Like maybe your brother did, your older sister did, but you guys are the first generation to get a higher education.
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely. I think I agree with Walter, right? I don't think institutions necessarily talk about it very openly or have like a set definition towards it. But as Jorge mentioned, right, it's a student who is pursuing a higher education, or maybe even like high school, right? And maybe their parents didn't graduate from school and they're going to become a first generation from high school.
Thank you for that. And to answer your question, Evid, about how do institutions define being first generation, I think both Jorge and Evelyn bring up a really good point that there's really no one clear definition oftentimes, right? Every program or every institution might be defining who is a first generation student. And so for me, the way that I would consider first generation, it would be individual, students who are here first in their families in the United States entering an American educational system. But we recognize that we do have students whose families had, high educational degrees back in their home countries. And so, at least parents have that additional knowledge of, what it means to be a student, even though it may be in a different country. And so for me, the way I see it being first generation would be first in this country, attending a U.S. university, even if your parents did have a degree. How would you define it, Ellen?
If anything, all of you guys answered the question in your own way. So part of the question is trying to also tease out is like, how do we in our personal lives, right? Whether this is, in our part-time jobs or high school experience or college experience, right? Have encountered programs that, well, in some cases we were encouraged to apply in high school, and in some cases when we are applying to college, right? I mean, some of you guys know the Educational Opportunity Program, or EOP, who specifically supports, right, first generation low income students. I work for a nonprofit that defines first generation low income as being a student, right, including their sisters or siblings, right, brothers, who are trying to pursue a 4-year education within the US, which, like you said before, right, we have students in our program whose parents went to college in their native countries. They got masters, PhDs, but because the definition of my organization is specifically within the context of the US, these students are eligible to apply for my program, right? But then there are bigger organizations. I believe the program mentor might have a more broader definition that says that you're first gen only when all your siblings or brothers, right, are going to college for the first time in general, trying to just achieve a college education. So that definition might be more broader than mine. I think that for me, a little bit growing in high school, I never really understood what was first generation. I don't think we encountered that, or at least my high school didn't have those funds, so I could never apply to any of those programs like Avid or so. But I think that we need to account how institutions just define first gen, depending, of course, of their programming, right, the political agenda, and who their audience is. But in many cases, they don't really. They might think of first gen as just being students coming from low income communities or historically marginalized communities without seeing, no, without trying to understand what that really entails.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I'm, I'm wondering, and I'd love to hear from, from all of you about what has your experience been like as a first gen student, right? Based on, again, your personal experiences, whether in community college or transferring to San Jose State.
As far as for me, it's been a bit of a challenge, definitely because there's not much guidance from your family, so you really have to figure out a lot of stuff on your own, really. Um, and there's not much support, much mentorship, you know, that you get as a first generation student. You can always look for it and find it, but you tend to have to put a lot more work in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to add to what Jorge said, being like the whole family stuff. I feel like they're always there to push you into pursuing higher education, but you can't necessarily rely on them in a way as a support system. And, like it's very hard for them to also understand the whole process or just what college students go through mentally with all the work. So yeah, it's definitely a little difficult to find that mentorship with your family.
Yeah. And Evid, do you want to share a little bit about your experience as a first generation?
Yeah, actually, and this is just to add to what all of you guys have said, which is on point. It has to do a lot with how our families, right, and not just provide support for us trying to pursue a college education. We have to understand that some of our families are still working under very strict notions of gender relations, where they have different plans or different agendas for the boys and the girls, right? But at the same time, and this kind of goes back to what we asked before, if our parents had a college education in their home countries, then they might be more supportive of their children going to college in the US, right? But at the same time, if you only have a mom, right, and 3 siblings, right, and you're like the oldest, then your mom might not think of college education as being the best option. Your mom might see as you working to help the family as the priority. So it's very variable. At least for me, I didn't know I was first gen. I just know that my mom was working all the time, like a lot of our parents, and she didn't know what college was, so I had to do everything myself, just like Jorge. Like, just gotta network, just gotta ask questions, whether they might sound dumb to some people, but hey, you're learning. You don't know anything, and yeah, your counselors, some of them, right, might give you some tips, but they're limited to just your senior year, and after that, ciao. And then you need to proceed, and then just starting as a first gen in college is like confusing. You get lost so easily.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear from all of you about, your experiences as we know that, being first generation is one full on experience, but how has your immigration status complicated it? If it has.
Well, as far as immigration status, it has complicated it a bit. Well, right now, because of like DACA, it's more lenient, but I'm still limited to certain things that I could do. For example, if I'm a student and let's say I want to work and get like pretty good pay, let's say, like I can't go get like a job that requires you to be a U.S. citizen. You know what I mean? Or there's certain jobs and careers that require you to be a U.S. citizen, and though even if I'm interested in one of those, it's like it's kind of sad that you can't really pursue that career because you don't have the proper documentation. Like, I think if you want to be a police officer, I think you would probably have to be like a U.S. citizen or federal government jobs, kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely seen, when your status kind of affects the major that you want to pursue. But also, and I don't mean to say this more in a social way, but I've encountered like classmates and they talk about, going on trips or studying abroad. And I feel left out, it's because I know that I can't do that, or I don't have the luxury to travel whenever I want, to to just like go out a weekend and go somewhere outside the country, or even to study abroad, right? Like, I'm very limited to the stuff that I want to do. And I've definitely seen it there, and it kind of sucks.
Yeah, so it's like those key moments in a student's life where, you're thinking about travel, like you mentioned, Evelyn, Jorge, traveling abroad, or, the requirements of a major for example, like you have to study abroad or you have to do service learning in this one specific agency. All of that can definitely hinder your experience, right? And so just to clarify to viewers, when we're talking about immigration status, we're talking about being undocumented again, right? Not having the ability to or having the legal status to be here and be able to travel, be able to work freely. We do have many students who have a work permit, such as DACA or TPS, temporary protective status, but that is not the case for everyone. And so, if we can only imagine the experiences of those who do have some sort of forward protections, right? How much more challenging could it be for those who don't? And so maybe, Evid, I'd like to extend the question to you. Like, how did your immigration status complicate your experience as a first generation student?
Yeah, if anything, I mean, you're taking me back because, I came, you and I are from that generation that we only had the AB 540 form. And that's the only thing we got. No financial aid, no state aid, no nothing. So at least for me, it was very limited. My senior year, like a lot of my friends, right, who knew I didn't have papers, right, but of course they didn't care because they don't understand at the same time. But also I grew up in SF, so it's different, right, how every city shapes that. It was frustrating to see many of them going to UC Santa Cruz or UC Davis, and for me it was like, yeah, I got accepted maybe into UC Riverside or something like that, I don't remember, or San Jose State, but can I really afford that? And I was like, no, I can't afford that. Can't take loans. So I just, went to City College. I got enough scholarships to pay for a few years. And then, I just wanted to start, going to college. But it was definitely frustrating. It was definitely limited into what I can do, what kind of jobs I can get. I can't travel, can't go back to Peru, can't get this, can't get that. So it was more of a strategy, right? It's like, how do I manage going to college and being undocumented? And on top of that, I have to worry about my mom too because, she doesn't have papers. So it was definitely, you can forget about that. If anything, actually, this kind of goes into our next question. And Anna, please feel free to also answer this one. What does being undocumented mean to you guys?
Yeah, thank you. And I actually, if I can take a step back, because I really feel like there's something that you talked about, right? The AB 540, which I don't think a lot of our viewers know what that is. And so for our undocumented communities, when we're talking about accessing higher education, it's not so much that you can't get into university because, of your immigration status. At least in the state of California, your immigration status does not have or weigh in when determining whether or not you're eligible to be a student at a university, right? And so students who are undocumented have to really depend on state policies in California that help define who gets to qualify for institution depending on the number of years they lived in California and went to a high school in California and graduated from one. And that's just one aspect of it. And so having to navigate that extra layer of what it means to be undocumented in education as a first-gen student, it's just trying to qualify for institution and understand what that means. I think it's a very key part of the undocumented student experience as they're starting off there. their journey in higher education. But to your question, Edith, about what does it mean to be undocumented? At least for me, I think for me to my experiences as an undocumented person, especially when I was an undergraduate, definitely impacted how I saw myself, right? And it took time and working with others and getting to hear other perspectives for me to realize that my immigration status doesn't define me, right? It doesn't define who I am as a person. But what it has done is it has helped me get a better understanding of just how inhumane our world can be when it comes to welcoming newcomers, because this is not just a U.S. issue, and so this experience has pushed me to think outside the box, think about solutions that don't have an easy answer. It has helped me be creative with what I want to do in my life, right? And knowing that, yeah, I may be able to be within the system because of my immigration status, but at the same time, I know that my status is very conditional and can be taken away at any moment. We saw that in the last 4 years. And so for me, being undocumented means also I always have to have a plan, regardless of what that is. I have to have a plan at all costs because I cannot afford not having a plan. And so it's quite an experience, right, as an undergrad, but even as you graduate from college, that feeling of being first generation and undocumented still goes beyond just graduation. But I don't want to make it sound sad for undergrads here, but I mean, I would like to hear from all of you. What does it mean to be undocumented for you?
Well, for me, it's like not having documents. Just like you're here, but you don't have all the freedom because you're limited in like so many ways. So it's basically what it is. You're basically living in the shadows.
I think for me, it means to kind of like show people that they're wrong, prove people wrong. Because oftentimes they try to bring you down just because of your status. And I've caught myself in this kind of like roller coaster where people will tell you, no, you can't do this because you're undocumented, right? And I encountered this with family members telling me that I can't, or saying like I couldn't obtain a higher education because of my status, right? And I think that's where you prove people wrong and you do your best if you want it, right? You show them like your capability because I think your status should not define who you are. And it does not define the things that you can do. At the end of the day, you are capable as a person to succeed. And I think no one should be holding you back. And I just think like, to break barriers and just do something that makes you happy.
That's amazing. Thank you, Evelyn, for that reminder. Because I think that's part of that work that we constantly have to do, just prove that we are not what they say we are, right? And we hear what they say we are. And so it always feels great when we're able to prove the broader narrative wrong.
No, yeah, I mean, all of you guys are on point. And it's a complicated term to say. It's a term that is very heavy. It impacts a lot. And I think that is also a matter of when you first understood that, right? I mean, at least for me, when I came, I was 15 and I knew I was about to overstay my visa, right? So, I will be undocumented, but I really, indocumentado. But at the time, it's like, I don't know what that means, right? And and as you grow to college and you become older and you go to grad school, right? You read a lot, and at the end of the day, you understand that this term is really a term that dehumanizes bodies, that renders bodies disposable, right? Deportable. it takes all the hard work that all of us are doing, right, in our particular fields. It disregards our contributions. It poses us as being criminals in this country when we're not. And like many of you guys, I was like, as you read, you become pissed, you become angry, right? Not at you professors to say that, because some of them, are well read, but at the media that doesn't really portray our experience in this country, or even at the media that portrays just those good stories, those stories of undocumented students who are, who just fit a particular kind of subject, right, or person, to say that. And for me, like you, and I always had to have a plan in mind, just plan A, plan B, plan C, because back on the day, at least for me, it's like, I don't know when can La Migra or immigration can pick me up and deport me like that. I never knew that. And until today, I still feel like that. Some things never go away, which means like always have a plan A, B, and C. But again, that term undocumented, it's heavy, but it really dehumanizes bodies and people. And I think all of us are proving that term wrong, that we're different than that.
Yeah. And also recognizing a movement to redefine what it means to be undocumented, and not necessarily focus on the sad stories like you said, Evid, but focus on the joy, the what we bring to the table, and just the fact that we're human, right? Just being able to be recognized for simply being human beings. It's so important, and it's so empowering to see so many folks, undocumented youth, redefining that and taking full ownership of the term, or challenging and rejecting the stereotypes and the negative connotations that are placed on our communities. And so to close this conversation, again, we all experience being undocumented differently depending on where we grew up, the schools, the support system that we've had. And so I would like to ask a question to all of you, more of a reflection question, but can you reflect on people that you've met, or resources that you've utilized to help you navigate your experience as a college student? What has supported you, and what tips would you give out to students who are maybe caught up in a situation where they don't know who to reach out to?
The best resource I encountered was the Undocumented Resource Center, because I came from community college and there wasn't any that I could remember support for undocumented students at my community college. And my best bet was talking to advisors till you find the right one that really knows how to explain things to you.
And when we talk about explaining things, it's about breaking down policies, right, that specifically help you understand how you navigate certain spaces like work, traveling, etc. And so having critical resources that are specific to undocumented students are very critical in this. So thank you for sharing that, Jorge. Okay, go ahead, Evelyn.
Okay, so just to add to the resource center that Jorge had mentioned, the Undocumented Student Resource Center, I came across the center because I had to fill out my AB 540 form. And ever since then, it's been a great support system. So I think it just takes courage to go out there and to look for the resources. But because they're there, right, you just have to do that extra step to go and reach out, especially if you need help. I think we shouldn't hold back when we have a question, because, not only because of our status, but it's just a great way to get connected with other people.
Thank you for that, Evelyn. And then what about you? What was your experience like, navigating as a college student, your support system, and what tips would you give to students?
Yeah, actually, our experience, it's similar to Jorge and yours. I actually, went to City College in San Francisco, and I think like the first tip that is not just limited to any college institution, but also for the professional world, is being open to make connections, networking. This is not just limited to your peers, right? Because all of you guys are taking the same subject, or because your peers like you are undocumented, right? If you're able to find a group, but also being open I wouldn't say open first, but being friendly first with financial aid, for example, or with some professors that who are allies. I know that for San Francisco State, God bless Nancy Yoderis. Back on the day, she was always very clear about how to do the form, any scholarship opportunities. She'll let me know, and I am grateful for her being at San Francisco State when I was going there. Yeah, and in addition to that, also to my peers from City College, who I met who were also undocumented, and we were able to open a resource center, and professors in both places who wrote me letters of recommendation to get more scholarships and letters for grad school. I would say being open to networking is one of the essential things, and finding resource centers who are allies. I know that at least at City College, I knew two more resource centers who were allies of undocumented students, and SF State, like two more. And even in UC Santa Cruz, I think that was also essential for my first grad school experience to say that. But yeah, I think networking goes a long way.
Yeah, no, thank you for that reminder. And I mean, obviously you've had already the opportunity to, go through your journey as an undergrad and now as a graduate student. And so, it's really valuable to hear, your experience even, after graduating, and the way that faculty can support you in that mission and, other staff member and other offices. And so, at least for me, I want to empower students and, one, remind you, like, don't be ashamed of reaching out for help, or, if you need to disclose your immigration status, don't feel any shame on that. And I say that because I know that there are students sometimes who do feel ashamed because of the connotations of the stereotypes of what it means to be undocumented. But like we mentioned earlier, you get to really define, your own experience, and your immigration status is not an identity. It's not a definition of who you are. It definitely impacts and defines our experiences through our other identities, and and that's important to honor and to recognize. But you are more than just your status. And so I'm really grateful for Evelyn, Jorge, and Eder, who have been able to join us today and share a little bit about their thoughts. But these are just 3 students out of hundreds of students at San Jose State who are undocumented, and that doesn't even include the students who come from mixed status families, right? Because that experience in itself, being maybe the only person in your family who's documented, and having parents who are undocumented or who can face deportation, that in itself is other things that we also need to recognize. And hopefully we can have those conversations down the line. But I think for our undocumented community now more than ever, it's really critical for you to reach out for support, whatever that looks like. Find your allies, find your support system, the offices that can help you answer questions around your major, career options, internship opportunities, fellowship opportunities, all of those things that really make up the college experience may seem unattainable because of, this 9-digit number called the Social Security. There's so many opportunities that are really tied into who you are as a student, your potential as an academic, but also your interests, your goals, your passions. So, take advantage of them. I believe, I don't know if it was Evelyn who mentioned this, just how much work it takes just to try to find those resources. It's so worth it. I know for myself, one of my biggest support system when I was in community college, aside from my counselor, were my peers, organizing with students, participating in organizing efforts to advocate for undocumented students and families. And so that really helped me build a strong sense of community within my campus. And so, I hope students can, find their way and find the, access to those opportunities themselves. And if not, reach out to us. That's why we're here. And I know Evelyn and Eder and Jorge are here throughout the year. So feel free to reach out to the Undocumented Spartans Resource Center if you ever want to get connected. And if not, that's okay. Like Eder said, get connected with other resources. I assure you that a lot of our campus partners are committed to supporting our undocumented students at San Jose State, and are willing to work closely with them to help them find the answers that they need for some of the most challenging questions and barriers that they encounter. So to that, thank you again, Evan and Evelyn. And Jorge had to leave just earlier, but Evelyn, any last words you would like to say?
I just want to say thank you so much for listening. Like Anna said, right, we're just 3 people out of so many, but hopefully you can get something from this conversation. And always reach out. Don't hesitate to reach out because we're here for each other. So thank you so much for providing this space, Anna and Eder. It's a blessing. Thank you.
I mean, thank you all for listening, and just like to highlight what Evelyn said, just send us an email with any questions or so. We're here to serve you guys, and yeah, thank you, Ana. Thank you, Evelyn and Jorge.
Of course. And please follow us on our YouTube channel if you want to access some of these recordings. At least this one is going to be on our YouTube channel at UndocuSpartan. Again, if you have any questions, email us at undocuspartan@sjsu.edu. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your evening.